Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Write with Nachofalafel. On today's episode, what I would like to talk about is how to apply to the MFA program. Well, I guess first of all, what is an MFA program? The MFA is a Master of Fine Arts program specifically designed for writers who just want to sit around and do nothing but write all day long and get a degree and go around saying, hey, I have a fancy master's degree in creative writing. But what does that mean? Why would somebody want to get one? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, when I applied, I had no idea why I was doing it. I didn't really know what an MFA was. I didn't know what the program entailed. I didn't know where to apply, how to apply. I didn't know anything about anything. All I knew was that I wanted to be a writer, and that was one of the ways I was told that I could go about doing it. I was an undergraduate. I was about to graduate, and I was talking to some advisors, and they said, "Are you thinking about graduate school?" And I said, "I guess." What are my options for graduate school? And when I learned that there was a degree specific for creative writing, I said, sign me up. Not only that, but I was told they would pay me to go to school. Yeah, I know. So I guess the big question is, what is an MFA? An MFA is a Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing. It's a degree specifically designed to give writers the skills they need to go out into the world and create the great literary works of our time. Other than that, they don't really tell you much about what an MFA is, and each program kind of approaches it differently. So I guess the first thing I struggled with was like, how do I go about doing this thing? How do I apply? What are the qualifications to do this? And again, every school is a little bit different, so you have to go to their websites and hunt them down. We'll talk about choosing which schools are right for you later, because the big problem for most people is what are you sending out? Other writers never talk about it because at this stage in your writing career, you don't really super want to share your writing with a ton of people. Maybe you have a workshop that you've worked in for your undergraduate degree. But other than those, 12 or so people in the class, you're not really going around sharing your work with a lot of people, and the people that you're sharing it with aren't exactly the same as the people who are going to be reading your application, or at least that's what you're thinking in your head. So you don't know. You don't know what to send out. You don't know what people are looking for. You don't know what's going to get you in and what's going to get you a rejection letter from your favorite university. Okay, so the number one most important thing you have to worry about in the application is the creative work that you're sending out with it. I realize that seems super duper obvious, but you don't realize how incredibly crucial your creative work is to your application. They will look at your creative work before they look at anything else. They might look at some letters of recommendation, they might look at some information about you before looking at the stories, but chances are, before they do any of that, they're going to pick up your story and they're going to decide whether or not they like you as a writer. So it is absolutely critical that you send out your best possible work. So what does that mean? What does it mean to send out your best possible work? Well, what they don't tell you is how to be a writer. Nobody ever tells you how to be a writer. They just tell you to write. They're like, they say the only way to learn how to be a writer is to write, and it's true. All you can do is just continue to write. But the important thing to do when you're sending out your applications is to try to recognize what type of writer you are. What type of stories do you want to tell? How you present the stories is overall the most important thing, because it tells them who you are. Your interests as a writer will shine through in your writing. So I guess the most important thing is to be true to yourself in your writing, and I know that seems like a terrible cliche to tell any writer, but as long as you're truly happy with the content you're creating, then other people will appreciate what you're doing. The trick is just to work hard and be proud of that hard work. You pick the stories that are the most you, and then you need to put them together in a portfolio. So how do you have 3 or 4 stories maybe that you really, really like, but you're only allowed to send 15 to 30 pages, let's say. Well, that's only really 2 stories, maybe 1 story, depending on the length. So honestly, if you have a choice, I would say to send 2 stories. Always send 2 stories instead of one. Because with 2 stories, you have the opportunity to really show people what you're capable of. You can show them a whole range of writing styles. You can use a dark story, and then you can use a more humorous story. You can write in the third person, you can write in the first person. You just kind of juxtapose the two stories against each other. Just create kind of a style. Use your own original voice to tell 2 very different types of stories. And if you pair those together in your portfolio, you'll be much more likely to stand out as somebody who is capable of expanding their horizons as a writer. And now that you've spent all this time looking at your writing and analyzing it, you've probably analyzed it to the point where you no longer like what you're looking at, and it's okay. It's fine. What you can do now is you can calm down, because something that nobody really told me until after I was accepted into a program was that when they're looking at these applications, when they're going through these stacks of stories, they're not looking for the perfect story. They're looking for a writer who they think that they can teach. Because if you're already a good writer, if you already know exactly who you are as a writer, they can't really help you the way that they could help somebody else who just has like a much vaguer idea of how they want to expand their writing. So if you can be honest about what it is that you want to accomplish and the things that you're trying to do to reach those writing goals, it will go a long way to getting your application picked over somebody else's, showing like how much you truly care about the craft of writing, what your influences are, how those influences affect your storytelling, what the ultimate goal of your storytelling is. Those things are just as valuable and just as important as the story themselves. And a story that's poorly written but has a good intention behind it will get picked over a perfectly written story almost every single time. Which brings us around to our next topic, which is how to choose your universities. Obviously, if you want to apply to an MFA program, you've probably heard of an MFA program and maybe have a vague idea of like how you want to go about choosing them. Maybe you found a university where your favorite writer teaches and you want to work with them as closely as possible and have them as an advisor. This is great. I also did the same thing. There was a university that I deeply, deeply wanted to be accepted to, and just I was not accepted, and it was really heartbreaking. But I had talked to my advisor at the time, and they told me, don't feel too badly about it, because these universities with these high ticket writers, you don't always get to spend as much time with that writer as you might hope, because there's a lot of people vying for their time, and you might not necessarily get them as an advisor. They might not teach as many classes as you would hope that they would, because there might be other faculty taking over that position. So choosing your university based on which writers are teaching there, it probably isn't your best route. For me, it was about location. I was living in Las Vegas. I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I love Las Vegas, but I was ready to move out of the city. So I actually went and talked to an advisor about how to choose a university, and we kind of discussed my needs, or what I thought I wanted out of a university. And they went through and found some programs in some areas that fit my needs, because I didn't want to necessarily be rural. I just didn't want to necessarily be in the middle of the city. So I applied to about 10 programs, and I think that's about the average. Most people I talk to apply to about 10, somewhere 5 to 10. It really depends on your financial situation, because applying to the MFA is expensive. So when you're choosing which universities you want to apply to, think really carefully about why you are choosing those universities. Some application fees are $50, some are $100, some are free. It really just depends on the university and the program itself. So check them out, see what they're offering, and see what your best options are. I guess one note of caution here is that you probably shouldn't go, well, I shouldn't say that. Try to avoid paying to go and get an MFA degree because you don't have to. And if you have the option not to, why would you? So there are plenty of MFA programs. Most MFA programs, as far as I know, offer a stipend of some type. And if you can get full scholarship or a full assistantship, um, if you can get a full assistantship to any university, that is where you want to go. Because they will pay for all of your classes, they will pay you to teach, and you can just sit around spending all of your free time writing and not really having to worry about much else. I was accepted to a university and I was really excited about the program and really excited about the people who are working there. And then when they offered me my stipend, it was only 15% of the tuition cost, and the tuition cost for out-of-state students was a lot more money than I could afford, and it was really heartbreaking because they were the first school to contact me, and I didn't think I was going to be able to go. Actually, honestly, I wouldn't have been able to go if I hadn't been accepted by another university. So when you're applying to programs, try to apply to programs that are going to offer you the assistantship, because the assistantship is going to be everything to you when you're in the program. It might seem like it's going to be more work than you can handle, but trust me, it's a lot easier than you think it's going to be to teach and to help people at the university. They don't really expect a ton from the graduate students. You are expected to do some faculty work, but they do understand that you probably don't have a ton of teaching experience. So if the thought of teaching scares you, don't let it scare you, because the students are going to be way more afraid of you than you are of them. So I guess after you weighed your options, seeing who's teaching where, seeing who's offering stipends and who's offering, what as far as financial needs, then all you have to do is apply. The application process is probably the most stressful thing that I have ever done in my entire life. So I am one of the most disorganized people on the planet, easily one of the most disorganized people when it comes to like my academic life. I can't put anything together. When it came to projects, let's not even get started with that. So I recommend, as a way to get organized, is to get yourself a bunch of those manila folders. Get the manila folder and put all the necessary information on the front of the folder. The name of the university, when the application is due, all of the necessary things that go along with it, and then just collect everything in that folder, because you are going to need to make checklists, because if you're applying to more than 5 universities, you're going to forget something along the way if you don't keep a pretty accurate record of what you're doing. Some universities want 15 pages of fiction, while some universities will accept up to 45 pages. And then you have to accommodate each of these different universities with different portfolios. So you might be sending different stories to different universities depending on the needs of those universities. So that's also something to consider when you're choosing your universities. Because I'm particularly lazy, I chose universities based on their location, but then also their application process. So if the page requirements were similar, I chose a lot of those universities instead of other universities, because then the portfolio creating process was a lot easier for me. Maybe you have more time, maybe you've been building your portfolio for a year or so. I threw mine together at like literally the last minute. Like applications were due like December 15th for the earliest for some of those, and I was putting it together like the day before. I was putting my portfolio together the day before I applied to some of these programs, and mailing them off and making sure that they were postmarked and in the mail. And I didn't get accepted to a lot of the programs, but out of the 10 programs that I applied to, I was accepted to 2. As I mentioned, the first one offered me about 15% of a stipend, and it really wasn't a reasonable deal for me to go. I was never going to be able to afford it. And then right as I was getting a lot of rejection letters, I had probably gotten 3 or 4 rejection letters from some of my favorite picks off of my list. And I got a random email, and it was in the middle of the night. I thought, oh, they send them between this time and this time, because you will obsess over this application. Once those applications are out in the mail, in the world,
all you're going to do is sit around thinking about them. Are they going to pick them up? How long is it going to take them to read them? What time do they usually contact people when they get accepted? And I obsessed over all those things, and I made all kinds of assumptions, and I looked at all the websites. And I got an email at, probably, I think it was like 11 o'clock at night almost. And I couldn't believe it. It was an official university email. It was like, hey, congratulations, you've been accepted. But honestly, I think the best feeling in the world is getting that email that says you're accepted. Whether you get accepted and you get the great stipend or you don't, it doesn't matter. Because you've proven to yourself on some level that you are this fantastic writer who can be accepted to an MFA program. And let me tell you, the MFA is a lot of fun, but it is also so much more than I thought it was going to be, because I thought it was just me going somewhere where they were going to say, okay, sit down and write the great American novel. And I would say, okay, I have no idea how to do that, but I've got 3 years to figure it out. But in addition to that, they make you do all kinds of other stuff. They make you take all kinds of classes and tests and all kinds of other hoops and things to jump through that were all kinds of stresses that I didn't even know existed in the world, because I had no idea what graduate school was like, because you don't really ask what graduate school is like. You ask questions about your program, about, what it's like to be an MFA student. You're not really like, what's the workload like? Because nobody wants to talk about how much work it is. But honestly, the amount of work is comparable, I guess. So I guess my best advice is, after you finish your applications, after you've put everything together, after you have your portfolio together, after you've chosen your stories, after you've juxtaposed your entire career as a writer on paper and sent off those applications, it's time to just turn off your brain if you can, because like I said, it will dominate your life. You will obsess over the process, because you're probably close to graduating or have graduated already, and the clock is ticking and you don't really know what you're going to do, because if any of you were like me, you don't really know what to do with your education. So getting an MFA degree is just one step closer towards doing something. And what that something is, you might not be entirely clear about. But actually going to the MFA program was a really great way for me to discover myself artistically, because you're being put in a situation where you're just surrounded by other writers, other creative types who just, all they want to do is talk about writing. They want to talk about your writing. They want to talk about your ideas. They want to talk about their ideas. They want to do projects together. They want to go out. They want to have drinks. They want to go to readings. They want to travel across the country with you. These are going to be the people that you spend the rest of your life talking about writing with. These are going to be your best friends in the whole world when it comes to writing. You're never going to meet another group of people as dedicated to writing as the people you meet in your MFA program. Whether it's the people who are your instructors, or it's your colleagues and your cohorts, it's everybody. It's really nice to be surrounded by so many people who are so dedicated to the same thing. Everybody just wants to go and have that artistic experience. So find yourself a really good program. When you're going out to find these schools that you want to apply to, if you can, hunt down people who are in the program currently. Ask them what it's like. Ask them what the students are doing, how they're building a writing community. Because the last thing you want to do is end up across the country at some university with no friends, just sitting alone writing, because you could have just stayed at home and written. You didn't have to go to a university to go that. So if you want the experience of writing with other people, the experience of sharing your work and being exposed to other people's viewpoints and styles, if you really want to grow as a writer, the MFA is definitely the place for you to go. There's a lot of other, academic stresses that come along with it, but in the end, it's going to make you a better overall person. And I am so glad that I went through the entire process. there were a lot of times when I was in my first year where I just thought I couldn't do it. But everybody told me the first year is the hardest. The first year is the hardest. You'll make it through. So if you end up watching this video and you end up applying to programs and you're sitting in your first year, I just want you to remember you're gonna make it through your first year, and once you make it past that hump, everything's gonna be fine. Because remember, your goal is to write. You are there to write and you are there to create. So as long as you always keep that in the forefront of your mind, you're gonna be fine. So, until next time, like, share, subscribe, do the things. Alright. Keep scribbling. Nachofalafel.